Hey there, Business Freedom Podcast listeners. Lars Hedenborg, founder of Real Estate B School here. Another awesome episode. You are in for a treat. We've got Fred Holmes out of Dayton, Ohio. They run a monster team up there, been in the business for more than a few years. And Fred, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I am great. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good. So why don't you take a minute to kind of just give us a little bit of a teaser, size of your team, a little bit about your market, talk about Tammy, your infinitely better half as we all have them. Kind of just set the stage for the listeners today.
Okay. Yeah. So Tammy is our team leader, does a great job of just showing us how real estate should be done, can be done, and sets a great example for the rest of the team. So CEO and team leader there. I just take on the title of COO, handle most of the operations and behind the scene. So at this point, business is operating at about 400 units a year. We're in a very cheap market, so we're talking about in the low 70 millions is about where our transaction sizes come in there. So at this point, got about 12 agents, 12 licensed agents, some licensed inside people as well. Team is purring. Team's doing very well.
Awesome. So we chatted about it a little bit before I hit the record button. Why don't you kind of set the motivational ball rolling a little bit? Has there been a quote that you've sort of hung on to or that you can really relate to when it comes to team building?
Well, there's there's a lot of thoughts about business and what should be the mission and what should really be the focus. Some people say it's all about the profit and giving it back to the shareholders. Some will say it's all about the clients. But Richard Branson, I think, is just a very wise business person, and he says in his business, which he has tens of thousands of employees, he says employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they'll take care of the clients, which makes a bunch of sense to me. And so it works very well here. Our employees are really precious to us, and we try to take very good care of them. And they do seem to make for some very happy clients as a result of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's one thing I've noticed, working with you a little bit, is that the level of care you show, care and respect you show your teammates is a little different than a lot of these teams growing around the country. It's you put your people first, and everything else will seem to take care of itself. And it also allows you to maybe have those. You talk about care and candor, it allows you to have those conversations when you need to have them because your team members know it's coming from love. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Because sometimes we do have to have a little candor and some pretty honest conversations when things aren't going exactly the way they should. And so I think they do know that ultimately what we want for them is the best for them and their families. We just love to see them succeed on whatever level they call success. And so when we call them out or coach them a little bit, talk to those, have those heart to hearts, they know what it's about. It's not about bottom line and making me rich or anything like that. It's ultimately helping them. And all this thing trickles down, but we really are putting them first. That's an honest statement. It really is the way it works day to day.
Yeah, awesome. So Fred, tell us, are you prepared to share the good, the bad, the ugly about your business growth journey?
It's going to be painful, but I will be prepared to do that. I promise you.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about the structure of the team, maybe the growth of the team. So how many years in the business? What did the first sort of phase of growth look like? Kind of just set the stage for how you grew the business you have today.
So Tammy, we began as investors, just flipping homes, selling them ourselves, that kind of thing. And so eventually Tammy got her own license just to sell ours, or to sell some of the clients that came through one of our properties that didn't like that property. She'd take them out and show them other houses then once she got her license. So that was the genesis of it. And at first, we definitely did not want to grow a team. We liked it simple and small, and we felt like that was easier. But as time went on, we discovered that small is not easier, and it just means you're doing everything, everyone's tasks. And so that took a while. So it was about 2012 when it was just me and Tammy until 2012, February of 2012, and we hired our assistant. She's still with us. She's our director of operations now. So everything has occurred since that time. So just in the last 6 years or so, something like that.
Yeah, so let's break down. So what did 2012 and 2013, 14 look like? How many people, transactions? What were you guys doing day to day? Did it work all perfectly and you guys took, time away from the business, or was it really hard? Kind of give us really get into it. Get back into those years in your mind.
Yeah, those are some interesting times for sure. This assistant knew absolutely nothing about real estate, so she was learning from scratch. She didn't have any of the terminology or anything. So it was a little bit slow getting started, but she is a very bright person, and so she was quite capable of growing with the business. Towards the summer, we brought on a buyer's agent who's still with us, and a little bit later that year. Well, I guess it might have been in 2013 before we even brought our second buyer's agent on. So just a little bit slow at that point. At that point, there was no way we were getting out of town. We were just stuck here for the duration. Everything kind of relied on us still. You can imagine a brand new assistant that knew nothing about real estate. She wasn't ready for us to take off and leave her. But with a lot of work that year, we did sell 94 houses for about $10 million. That sounds pretty funny. But yeah, $10 million worth of business that year. So with a little help, that happened. And late that year, we did sneak out of town for a vacation, first real vacation for a long time. We take a couple of days around a conference or something like that, but we actually got out of town.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get into your 30-day off the grid vacation here in a little bit. I'm gonna keep you in the painful years for just a little bit longer, if you can hang there. So what's it like day to day building a business with your spouse? Kind of scaling up to that 100. I remember when I was doing it, getting to 100 deals, it was so freaking hard. And then, going to 200 didn't seem as hard. And then going to 400 didn't seem as hard. What did the day look like? How did you divide, front stage, backstage? Tammy was selling. What did it look like?
So I don't think we were as strategic as we should have been at that point, for sure. But we did know that Tammy had a license and I didn't, and so that worked really well. I still don't have a license and don't intend to. And that just keeps me from getting out there and getting in the weeds. And so it's worked out quite well that way, so that Tammy was able to concentrate on the clients and their satisfaction and revenue. And she didn't have to take her eye off of that and work on the business somehow and lose clients and lose money and so forth. So I could handle that side inside the business, and she was out there working with clients selling houses. So I think that helped a little bit. It was still tough. The finances were still tough during those years, even at 100 deals. It was just dangerous all the time, just balancing the cash flow. If we made a mistake when houses are $100,000, if you make a mistake, it takes forever to make up for that financial mistake. And so we were scratching by for quite a while.
Yeah, I can respect that. And sometimes, and we've had these conversations, before, where there's just less margin. In a market like Charlotte, our average is probably about 275, and there's just more room for mistakes. You can get a little sloppier. You don't have to be as tight on your systems and your accountability. So I can respect that quite a bit. When you're in that year where you hired, an assistant, and you were teaching the assistant, you were figuring things out, brought on your first buyer's agent, what did the next year or two look like? Did you feel prepared to lead people and train people? 85% of real estate agents don't even have an assistant. So you obviously, you and Tammy had each other to start, which was a huge benefit, because you do have these differing sort of skill sets, front stage, backstage sort of division of the world of business. But most of our industry doesn't even get to the point where they hire an assistant. So talk through, how that was, how it was hiring people and training them. What were the good parts of it, the bad parts? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, I don't know why we were smart enough to do this, but we did read the E-Myth at one point, and so we were smart enough to document our processes. And the processes were pretty simple, and there weren't many of them at that point. But we really had something that was kind of like a little manual that we could walk this person through a couple of times, and then she could just follow step by step through the process after that. So that was a big help. That made it certainly easier as a result of that. So I think she was able then to start functioning without us looking over her shoulder every minute for at least some of the basic stuff. She couldn't answer real estate questions and know what she knows now, but for the simple basic processes of an office, putting on a new listing, something like that, then she got up and running pretty quickly with that.
And I know Tammy, she's a heavy hitter when it comes to capacity, to do a lot and just production numbers. In those early years, 12, 13, 14, let's say, what did Tammy's production look like compared to the buyer's agents you're bringing on? Did we get her out of buyer agent work and shift to listings? How did that shift happen?
I don't know when the shift to listings happened, but within a few years anyway, she began pulling back from that. But she was totally on the road showing houses in those early years for sure. But as she got more leverage, her capacity raised. So I think around 60, we were just feeling like there was a real ceiling there. But now she's doing close to 100 deals a year. But she just got lots and lots of leverage at this point.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of that. Like let's just break down leverage. So give us some examples of the leverage that, to do 100 deals and not have to give away her whole life to do it. What are the top 3 leverage points that she has right now?
She's just got great people in the office at this point. So with her doing 100 listings a year, selling 100 listings, then she's got a great listing coordinator that just takes care of a lot of things, helps with price corrections in her behalf. All that is done without her. She doesn't have to go out and take pictures or anything like that anymore. So all that's done for her. Everything about the process that doesn't require a license for sure, it's all done for her. So she is basically going out, doing the presentation, taking care of some paperwork, and then she's negotiating offers. Everything else is done by somebody else.
Yeah. Awesome. What let's go to the time where Tammy has shifted 100% to listings, and talk about, managing the team, getting your agents productive, good, bad, and ugly. I've failed more than anyone in that area. So what are some of the challenges in building a team and herding cats every day and getting them to do what they need to do to be successful? What are the challenges?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Looking back on it, I don't even know how we had any growth, but it was a matter of barely knowing a little bit more than the agents I was coaching and looking over. So we were just working our way through it. There was a little bit of accountability, but they were running pretty wild a lot of the time too. Eventually, and this would be after maybe 4 or 5 years of building the team, 4 years of building the team, we were having some one-on-ones, and so we're looking into their business just a little more carefully. But it was just a matter of growing with the business. So Tammy and I are both just very much into learning and growing, and at some point we just realized the business could definitely outgrow us, and we wouldn't know enough to run the business anymore. So we just had to keep after it. So we love to learn, we love to read, we love to go to conferences, and we just kept it up and just slugging away at that. And bit by bit, we just make some little changes. It was a little tough on some of the agents. Some of them have been here with us since the very start. Our first 2 hires are still here, but they've had to endure some culture changes where they were just free to do almost anything, to the point where there's a lot asked of them now and demanded of them now. And they've been willing to realize that I think they trust us. They realize that everything we do has so far helped us move ahead, and it's all in with their welfare in mind. And so they've bent with that as well, and have gone along with it. And as a result, they're doing great. So they're six-figure producers now, and have a great life themselves. So,
Yeah.
But it's been a challenge for everybody. People that don't like change better not be around here, because we've had to make a lot of changes, and I know there's a bunch ahead for us too.
Yeah, that's true. Especially in the low price market where, the market shifts and you need to look at lead sources. We've dug into that a little bit, dig into lead sources and the economics of the decisions that you're making, and, some higher level stuff. And I love how you mentioned, the reason why a real estate agent potentially won't ever scale into a business person is because they're not looking at themselves, first of all, as a business person, and they're not improving their skills, their mindsets. I think we reconnected. We met a long time ago, and then we reconnected. I think I saw you at a Brennan Burchard event. I'm like, what? That's Fred and Tammy. It was like just a random sort of meetup, and
Yeah.
and you guys will do that a few times a year. Get out to something that's unrelated to real estate, which is really cool. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, and when we saw you there, we had our team with us. It was 7 or 8 people with us. Not the whole team, but they're feeling the same way, and so we'll drag them along with us to anything they'll go to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fred, let's transition into something that I believe isn't really talked about much in our industry. Some of your failures. So the tougher times, the times where you kind of alluded to it in the early days, cash flow, and maybe some of those moments where it didn't seem worth it moving forward, or you kind of questioned what you were doing. Share a couple of those failure points with us.
Yeah, I think early on we got some advice, about print. Maybe we were doing some print advertising, spending a bunch of money on that. And we were leveraging the business at times where it was that we were losing money, and we were just putting it on a card. So we got way out there on a limb because of some of that. And a lot of that stuff was just branding. There were no responses. There was no lead gen from it. There was no ROI. And we were too committed, and we stayed with it too long. So what we've learned from some of those kind of things is just to be a little more nimble. It's really hard to lock us into a contract of some kind. If someone wants us to do 6 months, that alone would probably keep us from doing it. We just, if it's not right, we don't want to be tied into that for 6 months, and we just can't afford it in this market to make a mistake and then to compound it by doing it 6 times over. That's just foolish. So we're just keeping ourselves ready to move, ready to turn, whatever it takes. And especially as this market seems to be heading toward a shift, we're just thinking about that every day and digging in harder and harder for watching for some of those things so we don't make those mistakes anymore. But we rather than demanding an immediate return from our marketing, we just trusted too much and went to too long with too many things. And it really put us in a real jam with a lot of credit card debt that we had to get rid of someday.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit, because I think that is it runs rampant in our industry. It's we're marketed to, real estate agents, we're marketed to so heavily, and everything is the thing that works. And so you kind of get into business with this platform or this little thing, and then you see another one, you're like, oh crap, I'm in this one, and you try the other one, you let the other one go, and you never sort of launch, or you're never responsible with your spending. What's some advice you can give for someone that's in that scaling phase and they're starting to spend a little bit of money on lead gen, and what advice would you give them?
But I think we probably tried too many things at once. So find just 1 or 2 is likely to support a business nicely. Even now, we've got it pretty lean on it. We don't have we're not spread out across a dozen lead sources. We're deep on a couple of them instead of going so wide. And so I think that's probably what could happen. So just find something simple and cheap and hone it, just squeeze everything you can out of it. Just for instance, like signs. If anybody has a listing or can borrow a listing, just signage could get you so much money. That's something we're even now working on and trying to hone a little bit more. But it could be so easy. But you do try too many things, and you can't do any of them well, and none of them pay off, and all of them are costly.
Yeah. It's that's probably the best advice. If we stop the podcast now and just go deep, not wide, our best members, will do 300 units and they've got 2 paid lead courses, a database, and their yard signs. And it's reluctantly will they add another lead source, because they know there's still more juice, in the lemon that they have. And it's all about squeezing the lemon. So that is amazing. Any other points, maybe the emotional side of it? Is there any advice you can give someone who's looking to build a business versus just be a real estate agent? Any advice you can give them on the psychology of building a business and how to get through those times where you're like, man, this doesn't feel good? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say all of us, no matter what level we're at, we've got to work on the head stuff. We've just got to hone our ability to be resilient and to deal with disappointments and setbacks and nasty things that happen. You get a little bigger, and the problems just get bigger. That's all. You got a bullseye on your back, and people in your market are taking pot shots at you, and you have more of those kind of issues. And it's just a different set of problems that you're always going to have them. They don't go away. And so you just got to have a mindset that a lot of that just rolls off or bounces off, and it just doesn't penetrate. So that's some of the self-improvement that we're into all the time. It has definitely made a difference. That doesn't mean that there aren't black days. And there have been some tough ones, but especially those tough ones in the past are what made us realize we're just going to have to be really strong to make it in this business and to get through these problems. It's just a business, and it's a complicated business sometimes. So it's gonna be like that. But there have been some times where we just didn't know whether we ought to just back up and just have a team with me and Tammy, and that's the team. We've had those days where the thought was, couldn't we even make more money doing that? So I don't know about whether we could make more money, but it would not be. We do know that having the people around us and the leverage around us has changed our life, given us weekends and evenings back and some of those kinds of things. So that's where the advantages come to just sticking with it and going ahead, and eventually you get some of those rewards and you get a little bit more freedom, which for us is worth more than the money. So we're not so much about money and things and stuff like that, but we love experiences, and so we love the freedom that allows us to have those.
Yeah. Awesome. You said something there which I want to pick up on, because you mentioned Richard Branson, and I read about him recently, and it dawned on me that in business, Richard Branson has anywhere from 100 to 200 lawsuits where he's personally named going on at any given time. And it's not that he's a bad person. He's obviously aggressive in business and doing big things. And not that there's lawsuits waiting for you when you build a business. There's lots of problems there's lots of fires like kindling all around you, and they're typically all unrelated. So a lot of people that fail to scale thinks that this deal blowing up is attached to this fire agent, causing some drama, is attached to, their Zillow. They'll attach all the issues and it'll become too overwhelming. Instead of just thinking that they're just all little issues, that they're always going to be there, and just have a calm, like you said, that they're always going to be there. And it's just part of running a business. You may have 8 issues or 15 issues, but there's always going to be 8 to 15 big issues all the time. And it's your job as a business owner to manage the issues.
I can vouch for that. That's the way it's been. So if you got problems when you're at 10 or 15 deals, it's going to be magnified as you grow, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about, at some point in the journey, maybe it was a transition, like a light bulb came off where you saw the world differently or you broke through a tough obstacle. Can you think about some of those moments of truth where you just drew a line in the sand and you decided it was going to be different in the future, or how you overcame some of those obstacles?
So I don't know. I don't know where those big places are exactly. I don't know if they're just little ones that eventually get us somewhere. I don't know. It might be as small as like taking Tammy's cell phone off of her business card. That was probably a pretty big line in the sand. Where looking back on it, where she just pulled herself back from that, and there's someone else to take that call. She doesn't have to be on call 24 hours a day, and others are taking the phone calls after 5, and it's not her anymore. So things like that made a big difference in our lives for sure. Just
Yeah.
something as simple as that.
Awesome. Fred, let's dig into the current business a little bit. I want you to kind of review the team structure, kind of maybe go through some of the profitable lead sources you have, lead sources that you tried that maybe failed miserably. Let's start with that. Kind of give the breakdown of your team, and then let's talk about lead sources that are working really well and lead sources that maybe were a waste of time and money.
Okay, so right now about 12 agents, if my count is right, 12 licensed people on the team, outside agents. Inside, we've got 2 closing coordinators. They handle everything from a ratified contract through to closing. This don't do any negotiations whatsoever. Agents step back in for the post-inspection or something like that, repairs. We've got a listing coordinator that can so far handle all the listings we're carrying. So we've got about 90 signs in the yard right now. We've also got someone that she's kind of she just has a few hats on, but she watches our social media, handles that. She's great with IT, anything of that nature. And we get to that point where it's really nice to have someone that can just take on those roles for us, and I don't have to always be trying to figure out what's wrong with the computer. So she's doing a great job as well. We've got a director of operations and a director of sales. Our director of sales handles inside and outside staff. And so outside is those 12 agents, and inside we've got 2 full-time ISAs and 2 part-time ISAs at this point. And me and Tammy, I think that's all. And we've got a full-time photographer on the staff as well. So he handles great still photography. We have a Matterport that he works with, and we do drone photography when the property merits it, that sort of thing. And we have a courier that runs around, picks up signs and whatever else might be needed from that standpoint. So he's part-time. And I believe that's about everybody.
Yeah, let's talk about lead sources. Maybe even the evolution of lead sources. I think there's, and we've dug into turns on different lead sources with you, and just by nature of being in a tight market with a low price point, the challenges there. But what are your most profitable lead sources, and what are some lead sources that you've really struggled with?
Yeah, so we've things are changing right now, even. So that is not the same answer I would have given 6 months ago. The answers are changing. So some of our, I don't know if we're mentioning anything by name too carefully, but some of the big platforms that sell leads are definitely not giving us the return that we once got. 3 or 4x is not there anymore. I know the executive we met with just a week or so ago with one of those folks, they said that pricing had just got away from them, and prices skyrocketed. So for a closing on this particular lead source, it went from $1,700 last year to now almost $4,000 to close a lead from that lead source. In our market, that is not profitable. So the ROI has just gone to almost zero if it's there at all. So really tough. So that has changed in the last 6 months entirely. Absolutely. So that was like market-based pricing that where it was almost a bidding war out there for leads in these zip codes. It has gotten too tough, and as a result, people are paying more than they would pay for a referral, more than 25% for a closing. They're paying 40% more for a closing. So we just got to watch those things all the time. And when things are fat and when there's lots of profit and lots of money flowing in, you don't have to watch those things like month by month or week by week. But the way things are changing now, it's got to be watched much more carefully and much more often. So that one change in itself has proven that to me. We couldn't assume that we are still getting those same returns there. So those online, those big portals, I think everyone needs to take a close look at those. And I hear others saying the same thing, that they're just not getting the return they once did. So things are changing for us. We are really concentrating on the phones. So our ISA department has really been doing great things for us. So we have been very pleased with what they're doing. One of the things that they're doing very well is outbound calling to expireds, FSBOs. Circle prospecting is ramping now. I can't give you any report on that. But these are people that are probably not getting reached otherwise, and so we're reaching them. They're responding well. We're getting appointments from it, and because that's simply someone that's not getting paid a lot of money and may get a little boost on the end. That is a very cost-effective way of generating leads, and everybody's got a telephone. So anybody that's listening to this could be doing that, and I think getting great results from it. So the ISA department has been a real game changer for us. And whatever we do, if we attach the ISA to it, we're going to make more money with it. So whatever lead source we had, when we used to have it all going to the agents and the agents answering phones and the agents following up and nurturing and doing all of that, it was just leads just running through our fingers and terrible wastage. There was one period of time where when we instituted the ISA department fully, we did not change our lead spend, our lead gen budget, but we doubled our production just because we were squeezing more out of those same number of leads because the ISAs were after it. They were answering the phone and they were following up on time and nurturing properly. So the ISA, whatever you do, attach an ISA to it, or someone that's very serious about the money that's being spent on those leads. The agents were just catching the easy ones, and the rest of them were just being tossed aside.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way that you say it. It's at this point, it's not about the leads anymore. It's about the process that you use for lead conversion and lead management. And we just did our team advance yesterday, and the theme for 2019 for our team is squeeze the lemon. It's really going deep on every lead source and eliminating the lead sources, and there's no shame, and I've mentioned it publicly all the time. Zillow is not looking out for real estate agents, and their salespeople are like assassins. They are so good with the with just the scarcity selling, and the prices have gone up four times in our market over the last 3 years. And you can't. They're pricing it for solo agents at a conversion rate that nobody can get, and so they're not pricing it for a team leader because there's no margin left when you pay the kind of prices that they're wanting. And so it's all about what you do with all the leads and nothing more than that, and going after the lead sources that are relatively free, expired FSBOs and circle prospecting. That's awesome.
You challenged me to look at my budget, and I have, and we have cut back our budget by 25%, and we haven't seen a difference. This is lead gen only. Cut back our lead gen budget by 25%, and it's a big budget, so that was a big cut, and we don't see a difference yet. I mean, I even challenged our Zillow rep to do the math. He knew how many leads we were getting. He knew what our conversion ratio was on those. He knew how much we're making when we sell the house. And he had to admit, if we cut $5,000 out of our budget, we might cut one closing, but that's how much we make on a closing. So where's the profit there? And why spend another $5,000 to sell a house? We're not into just selling houses and selling a bunch of houses without making something. So the numbers don't make any difference if we don't have some profit at the end. So he had nothing to say, and so we cut the budget.
And what's funny is that they're used to guys that just want they're all ego. They all want just top line. They don't track. We had an agent in our market spending $75,000 a month on Zillow. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way, even with half of it paid by a lender, that you can make those numbers work. There's no way. And so I'm happy to let that team, think that they're a real business, and they're not. It's a one-legged stool, and so, and you would not have wanted me to be on that phone call with your Zillow rep.
Well, we can see if like that, we could almost cut it completely out, but I don't know what, so we're scaling that back as we build these other things stronger within the ISA department. But it was, since you mentioned tracking, they don't know on tracks. We were at this event, 500 top clients, and I ask around. Everyone I asked them, what is your cost to close a lead, and nobody knew. So if they don't know how much it costs them to close one of those leads, they don't know whether they're making any money on those leads or not, and so they keep spending.
Yeah,
it feels good when you're spending some money and selling a bunch of houses, but if there's no profit at the end, then I would question why.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. So it's worth mentioning. Most agents, if they're tracking, the sophistication of their tracking is like, how much does it cost for a lead? So it's dollars per lead. We're tracking dollar per set, dollar per met, dollar per sign, dollar per written, dollar per closed. And it's a whole different game when we went from $500 to take a different lead source radio. We went from $500 to get to the front door of the listing to $2,200. And so now every time our listing agent knocks on the door, it's $2,200 for them to knock on the door. And they want to talk about, why we're paying a lower split on radio leads versus their SOI. And I'm like, are you willing to split that cost with me when you knock on the door? So there's multiple benefits to knowing your numbers. That's a really, really good point. You got to know your numbers, especially going into a shifting market.
And I like the idea of being transparent with your agents. Let them know just what it is costing you, and I think they completely understand then why things are the way they are. And I think anyone on our team, because they know those numbers, we've told them the numbers, they know that they cannot leave the team and go spend some money on Zillow and make a go of it. They already know that. So then they don't know any other way to do it. So they are not leaving the team. They realize they got a pretty sweet thing here.
That's really good. That transparency with your team, it's worth digging in a little bit there. That's something that you guys have done a good job of, is just being open with your team. Like, we're running a responsible business. You want us to make a reasonable profit. We're open book with our team as well. So I see that in you and Tammy, and I think it's admirable that your team knows that you really think through these decisions very carefully. And when we spoke about it on the phone, it's like, it's going to take away from our agents. And I said, yeah, but you're losing, we're losing money on a lead source, so we've got to come up with a compromise. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. But it leads to further trust. They know that we aren't just making decisions without real thought and without some real strategy behind it. We know what we're doing and what we're doing next. And so when we make those changes, they're not all scared. They're not ready to run. They just know that we're making decisions in their best interest as well.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I'm going to go through a bunch of rapid fire questions. So this is what we call the lightning round. 1, 2, 3, 5-word answers, just kind of whatever comes to your mind when I ask the question. Okay?
Got it.
All right. So, Fred, what keeps you up at night when it comes to your business?
So it's cash flow is a tricky thing in this business. So it's always watching the cash flow.
Awesome. What were you most afraid of when building a real estate team?
We were afraid of complications. We were just afraid of complexity.
All right. What's the best advice you've ever received about business?
That's a pretty tough one. I've heard some good stuff. I don't know, but right now, I guess I'm returning to Branson. That's pretty good stuff. If you take care of your people, they'll take care of everything else.
Yeah. Can you share one of your personal daily or weekly habits that you believe contributes to your success, or maybe something Tammy does?
Yeah, so I think starting the day reading something that is uplifting, motivational. That's the way we begin the day. So we try to avoid the negative stuff in the morning. Gets us off to a great start.
Awesome. How about any kind of an app or an internet resource, maybe like Evernote, that you're in love with that you think our listeners could benefit from?
Very interesting. So I don't know about that one. I love to travel, so it's not a business app. I don't know. I love to travel. There's a great thing called Hopper. Try Hopper before you buy an airline ticket. But except for that's first thing came to mind. I'm sorry.
No, I like that one. Share, because we didn't get to it. Share what you were able to do. I think it was earlier this year. The amount of leverage you had to be able to take the trip that you did with Tammy.
Okay. So a little bit, can I talk a little longer on that one? That's not a 5-word answer, right? Sure. Okay. So yeah, that was late last year. We got away for 30 days and we literally went around the world, circled the world. So at times we were 12, 14 hours away from the office time zones. And so communication with the office, very difficult, to hit them when they're in the office and for them to find us and get hold of us. Many places we didn't have cell phone service. There are places where there was no Wi-Fi or anything like that. So pretty much cut off a lot of those days. We were pretty worried when we first, as we left, and we were checking in often, and we were like planning times when they could check in with us next. But after a week or two, it was we were just pretty cool about the whole thing, and so we could just about forget about the office, and they were just humming right along without us. They were doing great. That was in November, December, and we had our biggest January we ever had by about 2 times. So they did great. They even they decided to release somebody, an employee, while we were gone. I mean, we empowered them to do those things, and they know how we think. They've sat right beside us and heard us talk, and so they just did what we would have done. And it was definitely a liberating thing to know that we could do that, and we could do it again. We're planning another one. We could do it again, and they would just do just fine without us.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so back to the rapid fire question. So if you could recommend one book for our listeners, maybe someone who's interested in scaling a business, what would it be?
Well, we're learning more and more about that EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system. So that's serving us very, very well. We definitely are not operating it at the highest level, but I like that, and I think as the business gets more complicated, you've got to have some of that structure that otherwise would probably be lacking. We tried the Rockefeller Habits, scaling up books, and we were it was a chore to implement, and so we got to that one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, and there are elements of traction. Is the book by Gino Wickman. There are elements that any real estate agent could start implementing. And then as you scale a business, it's bringing team members into the mix to solve problems. It's a really cool system. All right, Fred, if you had to do it all over again, anything you would do differently?
There's a bunch of mistakes I could avoid, I guess. Yeah, there's a bunch of things I could do differently. I have no idea where to even start on that one.
Yeah,
there's a lot I would do differently.
You've covered some of them. Fred, as we wrap up here, there's a lot of agents, that are maybe trying to do this on their own, or they're trying to build a team and it's hard. What's some words of encouragement you can give to someone who's struggling right now?
Yeah, I don't think the struggle ever quits. So I think we get used to that. We get a little thicker skin, and we get that struggle muscle gets a little bit stronger. And so I like the Brendan Burchard, where we embrace the struggle. Is that what Brendan says? Is that the words?
Honor the struggle.
Yeah. So I think it's a great thing. And I think it's at the end of the day, so much satisfaction comes from knowing it didn't come easy, and you fought, and you did all you could, and you've had some success. Celebrate your wins, which we're not so good at, but celebrate your wins. Think about what's gone right, and just keep after it. Yeah, get there.
And it that reminds me of a quote that I've really been leaning into lately for my journey, from Jim Rohn. It says, Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems. Wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge. Wish for more wisdom. And I feel like that's kind of sums up the whole conversation today with you. Is that it's going to be harder, but you need to step into it and step up and get that thicker skin and work through, some of those things. Track your business. Treat your employees so good that they'll take care of you and your clients. So, Fred, I appreciate your time. And as I was in the middle of this, I think I'm going to have Tammy on an episode separately. I'd love to get her perspective on the journey. So I'll be reaching out to her. Real Estate Peace School thanks you. The listeners are going to get a ton out of this. So the listeners, I know they thank you. So I've appreciated listening to your journey and getting a chance here to spend some time with you. So thanks so much, brother.
It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thanks, Lars.
All right. Thank you.